All right, quite frankly, I cannot wait to get into it today. There is just too much to cover. Welcome to the show, everybody. Happy to be here. Super exciting. I'm trying something new on my show prep because as you know, welcome by the way. It's Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide, and I couldn't be happier to be on the stool in front of you. Yeah. Anyways, I'm fine. Anyways, in prepping for the show, I make a point of not watching the clips we're going to watch together ahead of time, so that on the one hand, it doesn't, it's more fun to watch it kind of live with you guys, because when something ridiculous, funny, stupid, aggravating happens, we experience it together. It is a shared moment. And if there's a misunderstood moment and then a correction and those kind of things, that also happens live right in front of you. The other thing that happens, of course, is that I don't just build my show around gotcha shit, where I'm like, I grab a clip and I'm like, I watched this, and I found where my political opponents are fucking wrong, and I'm going to focus on that and act as if that's the entirety of their argument or something. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to burrow through their clips, and take a piece out, or just do stuff that I know pre-watched by somebody else is going to be embarrassing or bad for them. It's more about a topic that there tends to be in one particular political quarter, or even in some who allege to be on our side of the political aisle in that regard, a tendency to bullshit in an enormous way, or to speak in such hyperbolic and combined with an ignorant capacity for just a blatant disregard for reality, that there tends to be that we know they're headed down this road again in some cases. One of the great examples is Jimmy Dore. Now, one of the best ways we can clock how well the country is doing and how well the Biden administration is doing is how many attacks on the president in particular that Dore does. Because when you have a party that in a 50-50 Senate, where one party is absolutely for destroying Social Security. But I mean, Rick Scott's written up the plan. Every 5 years, they wipe out every social program, and you can't have it back unless you have 60 votes, and that'll be that. And hopefully they'll just, I don't know, if their argument is that Democrats are trying to pad their numbers by opening the border and bringing people in, then the argument counter to that would be that they're trying to kill off Democratic voters through starvation and death. So, I don't know if that's the baseline of the argument. Anyways, so yeah, the clapping walrus, where he stares at the ceiling and shows his teeth in lieu of laughing at things. Now, this is, of course, here's Bashar al-Assad. Here's Joe Biden. It's Biden's turn. Assad is apparently looking over Biden's shoulder as things explode in the background. I don't know if this was the best picture they could come up with Assad, but this is probably the most Clint Eastwood shot you could use of Biden. So again, if you're building a narrative, it doesn't really work. But this, no doubt, is going to be about Syria, wouldn't you guess? And so beforehand, I was looking up stuff. I don't want to check in on something real quick. So, and let's see. I'm going to do this real quick. I want to bring something else up. I want to make sure I'm getting something up that doesn't have ads over top of it. Okay, should be okay. Okay, here we go. Now, this is, of course, due to the fact that in northeastern Syria, and there's a reason why that geographically this matters, that that Biden signed off on the bombing of an Iranian-backed ISIS group, essentially, of that camp after they attacked our troops. Now, there's that happened this week. So I'm guessing from the explosion, from Biden himself, and from the picture of Assad that that's what's going on. We'll just see how badly he gets this. And I'm going to guess that whatever happens, the worst thing that could happen to Syria or anywhere is America. I'm going to guess that that's it. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Janine. Don't worry. It'll believe me, this one's relatively short and sweet, I think, time-wise. Here we go. All right.
Hey, guess what? We're back bombing Syria again.
Okay, hold on. And we're not bombing Syria, just for the record. There are retaliatory strikes going on at camps, at a particular one. U.S. airstrikes target militia-controlled areas in East Syria. Not quite bombing Syria, not quite shock and awe, but we'll, let me grab that article while we're at it. Let's see, U.S. airstrikes target militia-controlled areas. Okay. That's, okay, so this is, when is this video from? This is from, okay, this is new, and at least new in the posting. And this article's from 5 days ago. So this has been an ongoing thing. This is the article he's citing real quick. Hold on. U.S. airstrikes target militia-controlled areas in Syria. The U.S. military did not identify the targets nor offer any casualty figures from the strikes, which the military said came at the orders of President Joe Biden. U.S. military said on Wednesday it carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria that targeted areas used by militias backed by Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. There is no immediate acknowledgement by Syria's state-run media of the strikes hitting Dore ez-Zor. Iran as well did not acknowledge the attack. Opposition war monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and activist collective Dore ez-Zor 24 said the airstrikes targeted the Ayash camp run by the Fatamun group made of Shiite fighters from Afghanistan. The war monitor reported that at least 6 Syrian and foreign militants were killed in the airstrikes. Okay, so this is, whoops. So this is where this is what we're talking about. All right, here we go.
No kidding. No kidding. As we are pretending that what Putin did in Ukraine is worse than what we did in Syria, Libya, Iran, Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen.
Somalia? Sorry, for the record, the Russians literally did a blitz to attack the capital of Ukraine. They have seized a third of the country, and their intention that they announce on television is to wipe the existence of the Ukrainian people from the face of the fucking earth. They are currently hiding military gear and personnel in a nuclear facility so that they can fire from it through holes they bashed in the roof of one of the buildings, by the way, without being able to be retaliated against by HIMARS because they figure it'd be a bad thing if somebody blew up that nuclear facility. They have also mined it. They have also placed grenades under dead bodies and in doorways and in drawers so that Ukrainians returning home would get their hands blown off or just killed. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Not excusing, by the way, the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, which yours truly and many of the people watching protested against and are very happy that that Biden has gotten us out of Afghanistan, even though I never saw the finally moment from this asshole or any of his crowd.
Ethiopia.
I'm sorry, did we bomb? Have we invaded and attempted to control Ethiopia while wiping it off the face of the earth? It's so fucking stupid.
The Sudan.
Yeah, how did you know we totally declared Somalia part of America? Yeah, it's the 51st state.
As we're doing that in all those other countries, we're still pretending that Russia's uniquely bad for what they're doing in Ukraine.
It is uniquely bad. We have not seized any nuclear facilities to hide our launch, our missile launching technology, so that anybody who fires back on us risks a nuclear catastrophe. And by the way, the illusion that Russia isn't in all of those areas he also mentioned That I don't know why there seems to be in Jimmy's mind this idea that if America is out, so goes everyone else. That the only reason the Russians are there, or the Chinese there, or the Iranians, or the Saudis in any of these particular, the only reason, yeah, we should have cleared Hitler's invasion of Poland. Exactly right. They're not remotely close to the same. And by the way, let's understand. Jimmy is blazingly ignorant of even each of those conflicts, but we continue.
The U.S. military said earlier Wednesday it carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria that targeted areas used by militias backed by Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard.
Why is he turning into Herbert Lom in the Pink Panther when he reads this? Is it because he was supposed to take out the part where they were the targeted areas used by militias backed by Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard? How is that like Russia firing on apartment blocks or shooting cars full of people or mining dead bodies or sending in Wagner and Chechnyan rape squads? How is that? How is that exactly the same, and how dare we? Jesus.
So this sounds like they're doing some proxy thing with Iran.
Does it? It just sounds like it. It sounds like they're doing some proxy thing with Iran. Asshole, we're trying to make the Iran deal come back. We're not in a proxy war with Iran. And by the way, the fact that they're backed by Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard is not the primary action point of those groups. Their purpose is to be anti-Saudi, essentially. They're against the Saudi influence in the area. So they pair up with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. They pal with ISIS sometimes. They don't give a shit. It's a Shia-Sunni thing.
This has nothing... that's what it's out. Who knows?
Who knows? I didn't read this.
Opposition war...
I just took a piece of this. Who knows? I didn't look this up beforehand. By the way, just for the record, when I pull up these articles, just so you know, this is the actual article. There is nothing stopping Jimmy from taking this article the way it is and doing something like this. Right? Is there any, and this is, by the way, this is the first paragraph. Here's the article. What's wrong with just doing that? Why you got to copy and paste it, put it in a keynote, and eliminate any language that bugs you? And by the way, well, we'll get to this. I have no doubt. Hold on one second.
So this sounds like they're doing some proxy thing with Iran.
Yeah, just what's happening. They're bombing Syria in a proxy thing with Iran. Why the fuck is Iran in Syria? Why is Iran's Revolutionary Guard backing militants in Syria? Why is that okay, though? Why is that somehow the innocent part of this? Why is that the, I mean, the only reason we're there is, we want to fuck with Iran, but we don't want to do it in Iran, so we fuck with it where Iran is attacking other people. Jesus fucking Christ.
Says nothing. That's what it's out. Who knows?
Nobody.
Opposition War Monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and activist collective Dore Azaz 24 said
Dore Azor?
The airstrikes targeted the Ayash camp run by the Fatimiyon group made up of Shiite fighters from Afghanistan.
I love how Afghanistan, which is a thing also, and America just left there, not still in Afghanistan. So we left Afghanistan, and some of the Shiite fighters, apparently, maybe they've always been, I don't know. Let me just say Afghanistan like it means something.
The War Monitor reported that at least 6 Syrian and foreign militants were killed in the airstrikes.
Mm-hmm. I'm going mad. I haven't had anything but a chicken leg and some clear broth since Wednesday. I'm cracking up.
The U.S. Military Central Command said the strikes took proportionate, deliberate action intended to limit the risk of escalation and minimize the risk of casualties.
Yeah, it was a paramilitary camp.
It did not identify the targets, nor offer any casualty figures from the strikes, which the military said came at the order of President Joe Biden.
Yeah, he has to sign off on it, fucko. Okay. That came at the order of President Joe Biden.
So why is a president allowed to just bomb another country?
He's not. He's literally, these are areas that are not even controlled by the government of that country and have been usurped by Iranian-backed military militia groups linked to ISIS. So Syria we were in there. There's like 3 fucking countries in there, us, France, and Russia, that have been in and out of there fighting these guys on behalf of the Syrians, even while backing the democratic rebels in Syria who started with the Arab Spring and wanted Syria to become a true democracy, at least as best they could.
Because they're pretending they're fighting terrorism.
Oh, they're pretending they're fighting terrorism. I see. So just to clarify, ISIS-linked militia groups linked to Iran's Republican National Guard acting in a country, like committing terror acts and blowing up places and shooting people in a country that is not their own, is not terrorism.
Even though the United States is the terrorists in
We're the terrorists in Syria.
We're the terrorists.
We are the terrorists in Syria. Now, why would that be? Boy, this sounds very Trumpy. We're the terrorists.
We're the terrorists in Iraq.
We're the terrorists in Iraq. Well, I want to say that Iraq has finally, let's see, where is it? There we go. Baghdad crisis says protests. Okay, here we go. What's the latest? Because Iraq is fucked up right now. I don't know if you know this. This is the current state of Iraq. So it's very January 6th, I guess. Iraq protests turned deadly after prominent cleric quits politics. This just happened. Yeah, this is today. Followers of a prominent Shiite cleric stormed Iraq's presidential palace Monday in an outburst of anger after the cleric vowed to quit politics. The resulting clashes with security forces left at least 12 people dead, health officials said. By late evening, gunfire and explosions were rattling windows across the capital as long-simmering political arguments gave way to the deployment of heavy weapons and mortar rounds. None of which are fired by the United States. We have long since moved far away from the functioning structure of Iraqi governance. The violence was the most serious during a summer of unrest in Iraq, which has been without a government for the better part of a year and captive to escalating feuds between political factions, including followers of the cleric Muqtada al-Sadr and rival Shiite groups that are backed by, you guessed it, Iran. Sadr's followers stormed the palace Monday after he announced his final retirement from politics, a threat he has made before during years in the public eye, but one that could have been more serious consequences in the charged political climate and with the country ruled by a caretaker government. You are free of me, Sadr told his supporters in a resignation message posted Monday afternoon on Twitter. He quit her on Twitter. And now the country's in the shitter. The fallout was immediate. Sadr's supporters, who had been holding a sit-in inside the Green Zone, where government offices and diplomatic missions are located, scaled the gates of the palace, paraded through its ornate halls. Sound familiar? In scenes shared on social media. Soon afterwards, sounds of live ammunition echoed in the capital as security forces descended on the protesters. A little different than how we handled it. Elsewhere in Iraq, Sadr supporters blocked roads and government buildings, including in Basra to the south. The UN mission in Iraq called the developments, quote, an extremely dangerous escalation and implored protesters to withdraw from the Green Zone. Iraqis cannot be held hostage to an unpredictable and untenable situation. The very survival of the state is at stake, the mission said in a statement. Iraq's Political dysfunction, a feature of civic life since the U.S. invasion nearly 2 decades ago, entrenched a sectarian kleptocratic order, entered its latest phase in October when Sadr won the largest number of seats in parliament but failed to form a government. After months of political paralysis, Sadr withdrew his lawmakers from the legislature in June and sent his followers to occupy the parliament. Yeah, you read that right. Sent them in to occupy the parliament, and then while they were there, said, fuck it, I'm out. A rival political bloc comprised of Shiite groups backed by Iran has also held protests and sit-ins inside the green zone. What could possibly go wrong? Raising fears of a confrontation, you think? In the background of the political infighting, Iraqis have suffered mightily as state institutions from schools to hospitals deteriorate without government support. The United States is not playing with, as a matter of fact, it's our retraction from it and Muqtada al-Sadr's takeover and they're kind of drafting their own government. We have been in a very hands-off situation for the last 6 years, approximately. As all this stuff has taken off, like, okay, you picked him. He won hands down, but then it's all tribal, so they couldn't get parliamentary elections to work. Okay, but we're the terrorists in Iran right now. Jimmy has no idea what's going on in Iran currently. None. He has no idea. Oh, happy birthday, Teresa. By the way, you're watching House Parks Mega Worldwide. Enjoy yourself. Also, give me a thumbs up if you feel like it.
We're the terrorists in Libya?
We're the terrorists in Libya. This is current Libya. One second. You and I, America, Jimmy's country, the country where his $1.4 million house is, and where his, whatever, dozens of millions of dollars a year he makes on his show comes from. Libya's worst fighting, excuse me, here you go. Let me blow this up a little bit for you guys. Libya's worst fighting for 2 years suddenly hit the capital, Tripoli, on Saturday. This explains what led the violence, why it matters, and how things will play out. How did Libya fall apart? Libya's fault lines surfaced as local groups took different positions in the 2011 NATO-backed uprising that toppled Muammar Gaddafi. An attempted democratic transition slid out of control as armed groups built local power bases and coalesced around rival political factions, seizing control of economic assets. After a battle for Tripoli in 2014, boy, why does that year stand out? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's the year that Russia attacked Ukraine and took Crimea. And yeah, we'll get to them in a minute. One faction, including most parliament members, moved east and recognized Khalifa Haftar as military chief, eventually setting up a parallel government. The United Nations-backed agreement led to a new internationally recognized government in Tripoli, but eastern factions spurned the deal, and Haftar's Libyan National Army attacked the capital in 2019. Okay. But we blew them to pieces because we're the terrorists, I suppose. Nope. No, that's not how it worked out. The squabbling armed factions that controlled Western Libya came together to back the Tripoli government against Haftar, and they repelled his assault in 2020 with the help from Turkey. They'll come in later. Turkey's a big player in a lot of this stuff, leading to a ceasefire and a new UN-backed peace process. How did the latest dispute unfold? The peace process brought in a new government of national unity under Prime Minister Abdulhamid al-Dabeiba. Dabeiba? Let's just call him Dabeiba. With a mandate to oversee national elections scheduled for December 2021, but there was no agreement on rules for the vote, and the process collapsed. That's a little tough. So I blame Smartmatic and Mike Pillow. In eastern Libya, the parliament declared Dabeiba's government illegal and appointed a new one under Fatih Bashaga. Dabeiba rejected its move, saying he would cede power only after an election. Meanwhile, the Western Libyan factions that had joined together, blah, 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 and then they're back. Okay, so this is the current state of it. A car burns in the street during clashes in Tripoli, Libya, as faction fighting ensued across the weekend. How does it affect, I guess this is the big question. How does it affect Libya's oil? Control of the revenues from Libya's main export, its oil output of 1.3 million barrels a day, has long been the biggest prize for all the main political and military factions. You don't say. Really? We didn't just take it? I would assume we own those. Don't we own those? Didn't America take Libya's oil when Gaddafi died? Didn't we seize them? I mean, aren't we? No? All right. Groups have repeatedly shut down output as a tactic to put pressure on the government in Tripoli, where all foreign oil sales revenue is channeled into the central bank through international agreements. Forces aligned with Haftar, whose sway extends across much of the territory that includes main oil fields and export terminals, have been responsible for the biggest shutdowns in recent years. The last shutdown, which reduced exports by about half, ended when the baby replaced the National Oil Corporation head with an ally of Haftar. Well, that was nice of him, I suppose. A move some saw as an effort to court the Eastern commander and make him more open to a political deal. That may be enough to stop another shutdown while pro-Bashaga factions work out their next move. But with Libya's political tangles so far from resolution, there seems to be little likelihood that oil exports will stay untouched for very long. So there you go. That's the current what we're doing we're the terrorists in Libya right now.
We're the terrorists in Afghanistan. We're the terrorists in Somalia.
We're not in Afghanistan.
Oh yeah.
All right. Again, fucking hell. We're the terrorists in Somalia. I want to say, let's see. Let's see. What's the latest news on that? Because we'll get a little bit of history, but there you go. Began with humanitarian intervention. There you go. Most of our Somalia interdiction came, and in some ways in line with what we should have done in Rwanda in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. A lot of times it's because there's just a massive slaughter going on of civilians, and we're trying to make inroads and stabilize the country because, our country wants to make deals with countries that are stable, and they fall apart, and then a lot of people are getting murdered, and it's pretty awful. And if you want to have any idea what it's like, go watch Tears of the Sun. Oof. Somalia has long been has long been the overlooked theater in the U.S. counterterrorism campaign. From time to time, drone strikes in Somalia, military advisors assisting Somali partner forces, or an attack in the region by al-Shabaab makes the news, and then coverage goes quiet again. Yet Somalia has been at the center of many of the toughest counterterrorism legal and policy questions: how to most effectively support multinational forces and underdeveloped local partners. Whether a terrorist group for which the local objectives often seem to overshadow the global jihad is and remains truly at war with the United States, what role U.S. strikes should play, if any, alongside a larger campaign, how to manage risk to U.S. forces in unstable territory, how to deploy civilian aid in a very dangerous environment, to name a few. The Biden administration finds itself struggling with all of these questions. Now, in the face of what some argue is a growing al-Shabaab threat, and in context of a larger commitment to reduce global U.S. counterterrorism operations, yet the counterterrorism solution in Somalia ultimately is less about getting military operations right and more about building stability and good governance in a country that has for far too long known little of either. The U.S. military, and by the way, according to Jimmy, what we came in there to do in the 90s was just to kill people and take stuff. U.S. military involvement in Somalia began with the humanitarian intervention in the early 1990s as part of the UN effort to provide famine relief, and is marked in public memory by the disastrous Battle of Mogadishu in October 93. Although that conflict was primarily against Somali warlords who were impeding the distribution of food aid, the battle was the harbinger of the kind of fighting the United States would face in counterterrorism operations in the post-9/11 period. During the battle, U.S. Special Operations Forces on a mission to capture a high-value target were pinned down by militants and sympathetic locals. When the battle finally ceased, 19 U.S. soldiers were dead, 73 were wounded, 1 was captured, and 2 Black Hawk helicopters were down and destroyed. Hundreds of Somalis, including civilians, were killed in the battle. The searing image from the debacle was a horrible spectacle of dead U.S. soldiers dragged through the streets. Operatives from the then-nascent al-Qaeda organization were, according to books by Lawrence Wright and Ali Safan, present in Mogadishu at the time and played a role in the downing of the U.S. helicopters. In response to the tragedy, Congress imposed a variety of limitations on U.S. operations in Somalia. President Bill Clinton removed most U.S. forces well before a congressional deadline. Long after the United States retreated from Somalia, the conflict continued to shape U.S. thinking on urban and guerrilla warfare in general, involvement in Somalia specifically, and oversight of soft operations. Chastened by the Black Hawk Down experience, U.S. policymakers largely stayed out of Somalia's civil strife and limited U.S. efforts at tracking down al-Qaeda operatives in Somalia until, of course, 9/11. In which case we went after it. The ICU's Mujahideen Youth Movement, or al-Shabaab, fled south and started an insurgency against the internationally recognized Somali Transitional Federal Government. Seeing the instability in Somalia, the African Union in early 2007 authorized a peacekeeping force known by its acronym AMISOM to protect the TFG, accomplishing, this is, by the way, the African unions, like the European Union, this is them asking for help from the UN. This isn't us just dropping in and strong-arming them. Okay. We continue. If I dive down he's just gish galloping.
Terrorists in Yemen? We're the terrorists.
We're the terrorists in Yemen. Now, many of you know that Jimmy is a big believer that Russia should be allowed to do anything it wants in Ukraine. Anything. Kill anybody, rape squads, all that stuff, mines, like strafe bombing, any of it. Because, allegedly, the place is run by Nazis. That there are, that 9 Azov soldiers who were broomed out in the ensuing years after Yanukovych. By the way, Jimmy's pro-Yanukovych. He's the most thing he was upset. Yeah, stealing children, abducting 800,000 Ukrainians. Jimmy has no idea where they are on a map. I agree with. Okay, but also he thinks that simply because there's a nascent number of Nazis in a country, that means Russia can do whatever the fuck it wants. Carte blanche, right? How many times have we seen this? Every time Russia does something horrifying, brings in Chechen soldiers, brings in Wagner group people, any of that stuff, what's Jimmy's rationale? There's tons of Nazis in there, and so there you go. How can you be pro-Yanukovych? He thinks that the Ukrainians would rather have Yanukovych, and he believes that all of Ukraine's problems started at the toppling of Yanukovych, who, by the way, escaped to Russia with the help of the FSB. That's it. Here we go. So if Jimmy's standard is that in 2014, some neo-Nazis in Ukraine were bragging that they helped with Euromaidan. They were 8% of the people there, but 100% of why it succeeded, which is posturing horseshit of the level of like David Duke saying he's why America was great, that the white people like him are why America's amazing, those kind of assholes. Yeah, it's the same jabbery shit you always hear from racial supremacists. And that was in 2014. This would be Houthi supporters in Yemen, in the territory where the civil war is going on, with the fighting with Saudi Arabia, where this is going on. This is last year. Yeah, see that hand signal right there? I know you're thinking, wow, these guys look like Laura Ingraham fans. Not precisely. Matter of fact, if she was there, I guess they wouldn't even know if she was blonde because she would have to cover her head. This is where the Houthi rebels, of which there is a split, by the way. Not all Houthis are created equal. This major group, though, the group that seized a bunch of anti-aircraft weapons and some other stuff from the government and have been using them in their part. Yeah, they've been for their part of the battle. They are in this video. This is last year. This is 2021. This isn't 2014 under 2 governments ago. And in this, they are saying, "Death to America, curse the Jews." And I think it's like, I want to say, "Hail Islam." What was there's another, "Death to America, death to Israel." Yeah, and curse the Jews. That's what it was. So death to America, death to Israel, curse the Jews. That's these folks. And so, according to the Jimmy Dore standard, if that means we have to side with the Saudis to strafe bomb their entire country, I guess I don't even know why he's got any complaints. If we're the terrorists in Yemen, apparently this is Jimmy telling you that since these guys are giving a Nazi salute and are literally giving a Nazi salute and saying death to the Jews, that these guys are Nazis, therefore anybody who's against them, like, because they're against fascists. Like, so according to Jimmy, Antifa is a terrorist organization. That's what he's trying to say, I think, finally.
Today's strikes were necessary to protect and defend U.S. personnel. Who said that? Central Command spokesman Colonel Joe Buccino. He said that. The colonel added the attack was in response to an August 15th attack targeting U.S. forces. The attack saw drones allegedly launched by Iranian-backed militias target the Al-Tanf garrison used by American forces. U.S. Central Command described the assault as causing 0 casualties and no damage at the time. So they're saying to justify the United States bombing Syria.
Bombing Syria. Yeah, we just straight, but not camps that are and areas controlled by groups that are not Syrians. These folks are not, they're Afghan fighters and other foreign fighters that are at a Iran paid for camp in Syria. Not Syrians. These are not Syrians. Not these kind of not Syrians. These not Syrians. Those are different not Syrians. That's us bombing Syria.
They're saying that Iran bombed us first in Syria, even though there were no
No, they're not saying Iran bombed us first. They're saying Iran backs the militias. They're using very careful language here.
Casualties and no damages.
By the way, hold on one second. Let's see. Syria. This is recently. Here's, sometimes you wonder what is, it's not really what Jimmy is against, right? Because of course he's against the country he sits in growing old, fat, and rich. That's the part he hates. But in the meantime, U.S.-backed Syrian Kurdish forces moved to halt brutal torture at IS camps. So this is the Syrian Democratic Forces. These are the guys we back. Al-Hol, Syria, August 28th. U.S.-backed Syrian Kurdish security forces. And that's the important thing right here, Kurdish. See those guys? This is the part. If you guys remember when Trump pulled people out of Syria in the Kurdish regions? You guys remember that? And how we abandoned the Kurds that were helping us fight ISIS, and the Syrians and the Turks just basically squozed them and killed them? Remember that shit? Yeah, that's why we're still there. 100%. The only reason why we're still in northern Syria, besides the fact that we're helping the Syrian Kurdish forces fight ISIS, and they couldn't do it without our material support currently. The other reason is that the day we leave, the Syrians and the Turks squash them. The Kurds will get wiped out. Now, this is one of the operations. Okay. Have launched a new operation targeting Islamic State sleeper cells in a large northeastern detention camp. This is the same area. This is not, by the way, I don't know if Jimmy thinks that these folks are bombing Syria because they are fighting here against this particular camp, where violence has reached record levels. At least 44 people, including 14 women, have been killed this year in the Al-Hol camp, which holds internal refugees and families of suspected IS fighters. We launched the campaign at this time because of the urgent need brought on by the escalation and increase in violent cases by IS cells in the Al-Hol camp. Ali Hassan, a spokesperson for the internal security forces operating in Syria's semi-autonomous northeast. That's the area we're talking about. Currently, the entire area of that part of the country does not recognize Syria as their government, does not recognize. This would be the Donbass of this argument in Jimmy's world. Like you know how Jimmy thinks the Donbass is just Russians, just leave it to him, just give it to him. Okay, same thing in the Northeast. He told Reuters the victims showed signs of brutal torture, were often killed with silenced pistols or rifles and their bodies hidden in sewage pipes. Compared to last year, there's an increase in the pace of operations within the camp, especially during and after the attempted prison break. He was referring to January riot in northeastern Syrian prison, where IS suspects attempting a jailbreak took over part of the detention facility and dozens escaped. Hassan said perpetrators of the violence in Al-Hol likely had contact with IS units still roaming free. Al-Hol houses about 55,000 people, including Syrians, Iraqis, and other nationals who fled IS-held areas as the jihadists faced an onslaught by the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces. The UN Refugee Agency in June described the situation at the camp as catastrophic, saying an additional safe space should be created to protect women and girls from attacks. Agreed. But Jimmy doesn't want us to be there at all. Oh, and let's see. See if I can find this. Okay, also, this is, here's 2019. So anybody recall when we left Syria, in like big sections of Syria under Trump? And the only reason we held this one place in the Northeast is basically to separate the two IS forces, because if they linked up, they would wipe out the Kurds in the areas along with the Syrians and the Turks. It would be a bloodbath. We know this. They know this. Everybody knows this. This isn't even new. There was a video circulating of a Syrian soldier, a conscripted by the Syrian army, who did not want to fight. And to make an example of him, he was beaten brutally, and they videotaped it. One of the things they did was take a sledgehammer to all of his extremities, his hands, his ankles, his feet, smashing them to pieces. And then after he was dead and they were kicking him around a little bit, there's video of this guy cutting his head off. Okay, and the idea behind this was that this was supposedly, the assumption was at the time that this was ISIS or someone else putting this video up. No. The entire killing and torture of this dude was done by the Wagner group. And the guy who filmed it was later, they used facial recognition software to pick out who this guy was. A Russian-speaking man who filmed the torture and killing of a prisoner in Syria has been identified as a member of Wagner, a Russian private military company with ties to the Kremlin that has aggressively expanded into the Middle East and Africa in recent years. Everywhere Jimmy wants us to leave, these guys move in. The video, which appears to have been taken in 2017, showed several men. It's weird that the Russians felt like they could just kind of let their freak flag fly after 2016. Isn't that weird? Wonder who came into power in 2017. The United States might be comfortable looking the other way or telling us then. Okay, the video, which appeared to have been taken in 2017, showed several men in military-style clothing beating a prisoner with a sledgehammer, then beheading him, amputating his arms with a sapper's trowel, and setting his body on fire using gasoline or another accelerant. The mercenary, who has been identified as Stanislav D. by Novaya Gazeta, the newspaper, is a former police officer from the Stavropol region in southern Russia. In leaked documents, he wrote that he joined Wagner in 2016 to, quote, protect the interests of the Russian Federation abroad. The Kremlin said on Thursday it had no knowledge of the incident. I mean, the video was out and all over the place by the time. This has absolutely no relation to Russian soldiers, no matter what is being published about it, said a spokesperson for Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, the same guys are in Ukraine right now, on behalf, sent by the Russians into there. This is not, and again, I will put this up against the U.S.'s reaction and the citizens' reaction to the treatment of Iraqi soldiers and non-combatants and other people who were scooped up, and the leaked pictures of them in stress positions and all that kind of stuff, and them being, sleep deprived and all that kind of stuff, as fucking horrifying, and the United States citizenry being justly horrified and against it. And I still, to this day, believe that the Bush administration, with the help of you and others with, not you, but you in the, that you, not this you. Yeah. In the White House, you know, writing like this enhanced interrogation horseshit was garbage, illegal, and I'm not for it, and it is not exemplary of the United States, nor do I ever want it to be, full stop. That said, that's never the message coming out of Russia. The message from them is, fuck them. I don't know what you're talking about. Fuck them. The newspaper has not released the man's full last name in order to protect his family from potential reprisals. They have since, by the way. The victim is reported to be Mohammed Taha al-Asmal Abdallah of Dore. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar from what Jimmy just read to you? Dore? Yeah, that's one of the areas where there's a human rights group keeping track. Yes, it's a very dark episode. We'll get to silly stuff soon. It's just, this is what Jimmy's pulling out of his hat, so we got to address it. Whom the contractor's accused of deserting from the Syrian army. He didn't want to fight against his fellow Syrians on behalf of Bashar al-Assad. Family members had confirmed his death to local press, saying he had returned to Syria from Lebanon in 2017 when he was summoned to fight, but later deserted. Snippets of the video have been posted online since 2017, but the full footage was uploaded last week to a closed VK group for members of Wagner. That's the Russian Facebook. That's VK. Yeah. Just to clarify. And what Jimmy's saying is that no one's been attacked, like no one was attacked. So we bombed them because they didn't do anything. As if we don't try people for like attempted murder, or we should give them, they shot at us, but they just missed. So we should give them another shot. It's so weird.
They're saying Iran bombed us in Syria. There were no casualties, no damage. But they wanted to bomb back.
No, again. Do you have to wait until they get it right?
That's the official story. This is the
right. Yeah, we know.
Official story. Sounds crazy and
no, it doesn't.
Stupid. The official story sounds corrupt.
It sounds corrupt, especially when you cherry pick from the actual story and only choose parts of it to put in your little highlights. Oh, look, he's got red text.
Dore is a strategic province that borders Iraq and contains oil fields. You're kidding.
And? So the Iranians are trying to seize the oil fields in Syria? Is that what you're telling me?
You're kidding. Wait a minute. That's where the oil fields are?
We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil.
Yeah, that's when Trump ditched the Kurds and allowed them to be slaughtered by the Syrians and the Turks.
Obviously, the United States can't leave Syria, because then how would it fight the people who attacked the U.S. soldiers who are in Syria?
Yeah, that's not why we're there. We're there so that the Turks and the Syrians don't murder the Kurds.
So we're now bombing people in Syria. We're bombing Syrians.
No, we're not. You just read that they're Afghani and foreign fighters who are working on behalf of Iran in a semi-autonomous region.
In Syria.
They're not Syrians.
For attacking
and you're not serious.
United States military.
And I don't know what's going on with that shirt. Seriously.
In Syria. Why are they in Syria?
They're there to protect the Kurds who've been helping us fight ISIS both in Iraq and in the border regions of Syria and Turkey. And when we leave, they get murdered. That's why.
We got to leave them there. Because why? Because we're stealing their oil.
We're not steeping. We're not stealing their oil. That's a different area even of the country.
Oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure.
Hold on one second. Let me bring up a map. Hold on. This is a good one. Now, where's this? Okay. So, Yeah, let me blow this guy up. This is going to be fun. So, where's this region that we're talking about? Say it with me now. The northeastern part of Syria, right? That's what we're doing. The area, the northeastern part. Okay, so here's north. See that little N right there? North is the top. North. Here's the western, eastern. This is the area up here. Whoop. This business. Not this area. This is where this is happening. This is along the Turkey border, right here. Now, it looks close, but it's hundreds, if not thousands of miles. Here's Iraq. Here's Turkey. Here's Syria. Jordan, Lebanon. Israel's right down here on the little, it's behind my little square over there. Let me bring this down so you guys can see. Okay, so this is the area where this stuff is happening. So, and he's saying we're keeping it because it has oil in it, but we don't.
So
oh, by the way, wait till you hear, well, I'll show you this.
We're stealing someone else's natural resources, which...
No, we're not.
Which is what a war is about.
No, it isn't. Well, I guess Russia is trying to steal Ukraine's natural resources. Maybe you're onto something.
And somehow we're the victim. Somehow we're the victim. So let's go back to the story. Alleged Israeli airstrikes target sites near Masyaf in Syria. So
Masyaf. And that is, let's see if I can find the... hold on. Let me see here, if I may. Shrink. Key dink. There we go. So Syria. So that would be in here. Mesa. There it is. Okay. So remember all this is happening in northeastern Syria, right? This is where the bombing happened around the small camp near the Turkish border. This is where Masyaf is, right there. This is where the Israelis hit something.
So Israel's been bombing the shit out of Syria also, along with...
They've just been bombing the shit out of Syria. So it's the same. So Israel and America, bad. Okay, gotcha. So alleged, and this is fun, alleged Israeli strikes. Airstrikes. Target. There you go. This is the Jerusalem Post. This is the actual site. Initial reports indicated that at least one of the targets was the Syrian Scientific Studies and Research Center in Masyaf. Syrian air defense systems were activated above Masyaf in northwestern Syria amid an alleged Israeli airstrike. State news agency Sana alleged on Thursday. The alleged airstrike that they alleged. Maybe later. The agency stated that Syrian forces were confronting hostile targets above the skies of Masyaf. 2 civilians were reportedly injured in the strikes, and material damage was caused. The strikes sparked a number of fires. Initial reports indicated at least one of the targets was the Syrian Scientific Studies and Research Center in the city. The site has been targeted by alleged Israeli airstrikes multiple times in the past. According to the Syrian reports, secondary explosions continued for hours. After the strikes along the blaze caused by the strikes, local residents were reportedly instructed to shelter in place until the fires were brought under control. That's this right here. That's the fire, I guess, on the site. I'll just have to take their word for it that there was a building there, and that's not just a hillside fire, but okay. We'll allege that is alleged. The Syrian-based militias responded on Wednesday and Thursday, targeting U.S. Army bases across Syria. One American soldier was lightly injured. Lightly. In the violent exchange, the U.S. Central Command said Wednesday. In response, American forces killed 4 militia fighters and 7 rocket launchers in strikes in Syria's Deir al-Zor region. Alleged Israeli strikes in Syria, Israel. So because Israel struck that part of the country, they struck our guys on the other side of the country. Okay, so there we go.
The United States. Looks like a serious escalation in Syria. U.S. airstrikes on Tuesday night provoked rocket attacks on U.S. bases.
Those were Israeli airstrikes.
Wednesday, U.S. airstrikes on Tuesday night provoked rocket attacks on U.S. bases on Wednesday that wounded several U.S. troops. The United States responded by launching strikes from Apache helicopters that reportedly killed several people. So that's the United States ramping up war.
Yeah, that's what it is. We ramped it up. All right.
War.com. So where are the sanctions for the United States for doing this? And when did the U.S. oligarchs have their property confiscated? Then when is the discussion on visa bans for U.S. Entering the United? When is that happening? So they're pointing out all this shit.
Yeah, we have not attempted to seize control of Syria. We didn't.
We did to Russia for when they invaded Ukraine. Why doesn't anybody do that to the United States? We invaded Syria. We're occupying Syria.
No, we're not. We're in semi-autonomous regions that even the Syrian government doesn't control.
So that's a good point.
Nor did they.
U.S. claims to be
Aaron Mate's back
in Syria to fight ISIS. That's what they claim.
But it rarely fights ISIS. Yes, I know. We train and provide logistical support for the democratic fighters, the Syrian rebels who fight ISIS.
No, Trump told you the truth. The truth is they're there for the oil. But they claim they're there to fight terrorism. But it rarely fights terrorism or ISIS. It's actually there to deny Syria its own oil and wheat, and to occasionally attack Syrians.
Wheat. Fields of wheat.
And their allies who defeated U.S.-backed sectarian death squads in a dirty war.
And their allies who defeated U.S.-backed sectarian death squads in the dirty war. Breaking reports of U.S. troops sustained minor energies and rocket attacks in Syria. The U.S. military responding with Apache helicopter strikes. The dirty war. Okay. I mean, we all know Aaron Mate's, that's his line. Always.
They say we're fighting ISIS. You know, we funded ISIS, right? Just so you know.
Sure.
Just so you know, we funded.
Yeah, we totally funded them. Sure. Yeah, Obama created them.
Trolls have a hard time processing words when they come from me. This is Aaron Mate talking. He says, so here's a senior Biden official, Dana Stroul. She's explaining, this is from 2019, what the U.S. policy in Syria remains.
Oh, I'm sure it's the entire cut.
Here's what she says.
The United States still had compelling forms of leverage on the table to shape an outcome that was more conducive and protective of U.S. interests. And we identified 4. So the first one was the 1/3 of Syrian territory that was owned via the U.S. military with its local partner, the Syrian Democratic Forces. Now,
owned with their Democratic partners, owned by currently control.
1/3 of Syrian land that was owned by U.S. military.
Meaning controlled.
It was a light footprint on the U.S. military, only about 1,000 troops over the course of the Syria Study Group's report, and then the tens of thousands of forces, both Kurdish and Arab, under the Syrian Democratic Forces. And that 1/3 of Syria...
You're not going to stop, Jimmy, when she says Kurdish and Arab forces? You're not going to go, You're not going to go Syrian and You're not going to go in Kurdish, Nope.
Is the resource-rich, it's the economic powerhouse of Syria.
So that's the third we're occupying. I was wondering, which third of Syria are we occupying? The resource-rich area of Syria.
Yeah, that's why the Syrian government under Bashar al-Assad wants to wipe out the Kurds in that area. They see that as their land, and the ISIS folks are trying to expand the caliphate into that area. Everybody's fighting for the resources. The resources aren't why we're there. Stability of them would be a good idea. But also that they're not funding particular bad guys is also an issue. Now, again, most of this shit started, I think, We're talking, what, 2000 when the Syrian one, timeline one was about like Arab Spring. So we're talking about 2014. Oops, hold on. And then he plays this clip again.
So there we go. Now, just remember,
We're keeping.
this is why they don't like Trump. Why does the establishment and why did the FBI and the CIA try so hard to take down Trump?
That's what happened. Guys, it's all about the deep state.
Because he acts, not because he governed any differently than the Democrats or the...
Yeah, he kind of does. The number of civilian deaths during Trump's first year in office were greater than the entirety of Obama's time in office from airstrikes. Because he told them, I don't give a fuck. I don't like those people anyways. Do what you got to do.
rather Republicans,
But which doesn't matter to Jimmy because he lives in the Hollywood Hills.
but because he accidentally would say stuff like this.
We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil.
Hold on one second. First of all, oops. Let's try to find the U.S. Syria for that's the Guardian news. That's a minute-long clip. Let me find. Yeah, here we go. This is from 2019. This is that same moment where he's. By the way, for all the maggots out there, Trump is doing the weird Illuminati hand gesture. Apparently, when Obama does it, it's a sign that he's part of the Pentaveret. When Trump does it, yeah, it's just a thing he does to relax his hands. And by the way, okay, here we go. We're keeping the oil. We had the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil. During a meeting with the Turkish president, there's Erdogan right there. Well, last Thursday, the vice director of the Pentagon's Joint Chief corrected a reporter who said the mission was there. Who said the mission there was to protect the oil. I'm not going to pick on your words, but I would say I would be cautious saying that the mission is to secure the oil fields. Rear Admiral William Burns said the mission is the defeat of ISIS. Securing of the oil fields is subordinate to the task of the mission, and the purpose of that task is to deny ISIS the revenues from that oil infrastructure. Trump this fall ordered the withdrawal of almost all of the 1,000 U.S. troops in Syria after learning that Erdogan planned to send troops into the country's northeast to clear the area of YPG Kurds, which Turkey considers terrorists. Trump later switched course and decided to send in U.S. troops to protect oil fields in eastern Syria. Joint Chiefs, fucking hell, Mark Milley, speaking on ABC's This Week, said the new mission means about maybe 600 troops will remain in Syria. There's 900, by the way. There are still ISIS fighters in the region, and unless pressure is maintained, unless attention is maintained on that group, there's a real possibility that conditions would be best for a reemergence of ISIS. So we're committed to do that. The footprint will be small, but the objective will remain the same, the enduring defeat of ISIS. Pentagon spokesperson Jonathan Hoffman, during the same press conference last week, said the revenue will stay with the Kurds. The revenue from this is not going to the U.S. This is going to the Syrian Democratic forces. By the way, does anybody know if Jimmy drives an electric car? I don't think so.
And they can't have him say that. Do you understand why that's a bad look for imperialism?
It's a bad look for an American president. It's why we voted him out, fucko.
So congratulations, Joe Biden, bigger warmonger than Donald Trump.
How so?
Congrats, you guys. You did
Based on what? What is that statement about?
it. You pulled it off. By the way, Joe Biden finishing his border wall. You did it. More kids in cages than under him. You did it.
Again, the fuck is he talking about? Oh, I think he's going back to Obama before that when they did the separation policy. And by the way, no lost kids. Title 42 ended under Biden. Pretending it's all the same or it's all a wash is just fucking gross. It means you don't care. I mean, there are people in this world that will just kind of blatantly lie about stuff for their own political desires. Jimmy does it for some sort of weird, it used to be for some sort of weird anarchical pushback against authoritarianism or imperialism in the abstract, as if he ever fucking knew. But at some point, it just became in defense of Donald Trump, that he was being picked on.
Bigger military budget under Biden than it. You did it. We did
That's because the second year was expanded under the budget that Trump put forward.
it.
It was a 10-year plan.
We got rid of them.
All right, again, yuck, totally gross, totally idiotic. Can I show you guys something real quick before we head out? This is Jimmy's favorite war is, where is this? Yeah, let's go to here. From Jimmy keeps bringing up Yemen all the fucking time, as if it's an example of America is holding Yemen hostage. It's a constant thing. There's a whole timeline at Arab Center DC where they break down what caused the civil war, how long it went, what were the turning points when Abdul Saleh, I think his name was, where is it? His whole name's in here somewhere. Yeah, Ali Abdullah Saleh was he was like the president of Yemen for 30 years. The Houthis took over the north. The south was run in this kind of, they were attempting anyways through, a sort of post-USSR alignment, a socialist kind of government. It was the northern Houthis, the guys given the Nazi salutes, who eventually overran that government. Arguably, if Jimmy believes in, at least in what he believes Bernie Sanders was for and all those kind of things in the beginning, that was the government that was wiped out by the current people who control, by the way, as proxy for Iran, the Houthis. And there's a split sect in the Houthis. They're not all the same, but the secondary sect has just effectively all been wiped out or removed from power. But one of the things in here is like the really standard for this goes back to the 90s. But this is the Arab Spring. Here it is. In 2009 to 2010, in August 2009, the Yemeni military launched in not to be outdone by anybody, by the U.S. government and Enduring Freedom and Farting Eagle and all that shit. They just decided to create 2009-2010, they called it Operation Scorched Earth to crush the Houthi rebellion in Sada. At this point, Houthi rebels began fighting with the Saudi forces in cross-border clashes. Fighting continues until, after rounds of offers and counteroffers, Saleh's government agrees to ceasefire with Abdul Malik al-Houthi and the rebels in February of 2010. The Yemeni military simultaneously carries out Operation Blow to the Head, a crackdown on both the rebels and Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. This is while we were recovering, while Obama was taking office and we were recovering from 2008 into 2009, this was what was happening in Yemen. Saleh's government, he'd been heading the place for he was president for like 33 years. Yeah, 30. Yeah, there it is. 30 at that point, 32, 31. Decided that the Houthis, who were aligned with Iran and fighting against Saudi Arabia, and who did not agree in the existence and of the Yemeni government at all, it wasn't about move on and we'll take over and we should have a democratic election. They didn't believe in that at all. They wanted an ISIS-style state. They started fighting. They want to seize back Mecca and Medina effectively from the Saudis. That's a big part of this shit. So the Yemeni military launched Operation Scorched Earth and Operation Blow to the Head in 2009, 2010. And we're the terrorists. For fuck's sake. selects General People's Congress, agrees to a Gulf Cooperation Council brokered deal to hand over power, but the president refuses to sign on. This prompts the influential Hashid Tribal Federation and several army commanders to back the opposition, after which clashes erupt in Sana'a. This is in 2011. He does this like, I'm going to step down during and after the Arab Spring. Operation Decisive Storm. They don't fuck around with these names. After repeated pleas from Hadi, a Saudi-led coalition of Arab states, including the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Bahrain, Sudan, and Kuwait, initiates Operation Decisive Storm in support of the ousted president. This is for Saleh. The coalition launches airstrikes against Houthi targets, deploys small ground forces, and imposes a naval blockade. The United States announces its intention to aid the coalition's efforts. This is not just, we're backing the Saudis, we don't give a shit what they do. This was everybody. Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Bahrain, Sudan, Kuwait, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. The coalition declares an end to Operation Decisive Storm. Saudi Arabia announces it would move on to a phase described as Operation Restoring Hope. Because they're trying to keep us involved. That's what this was about. It's this whole thing is fucked. Then, of course, it all falls apart. Like, this asshole doesn't know shit about any of this stuff, nor does he care. All right, so that's the darkest we've had to go, thanks to Untucked.com's least popular model.